Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order and say welcome to all of our guests that are here with us tonight and those that are online with us. Tonight, we're using closed captioning on the YouTube live stream. Please speak clearly for those speaking during the meeting so the closed captions are as accurate as possible. So would everyone in the boardroom please stand if you're able, and we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Y a la República que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Thank you. So tonight is kind of an inaugural piece that we're going to do. We are going to have an acknowledgement of tribal land. So we gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. So now I'll just ask for a moment of silence for those that have given their lives in service to our country and also for our families and their staff and just our community as a whole. Thank you. Ms. King, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller-Aragon.
Here.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Here.
Barbara Peterson.
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Here.
Josefina Dominguez.
Here.
Courtney Jackson.
Here.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Here. Our first action item is agenda adoption, approval of the September 6th, 2023 Board of Education meeting agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the September 6th Board of Education meeting agenda.
I'll second. This is Danielle.
Thank you. Ms. King, we have a roll call, please.
Peggy Mueller-Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, our next item is consider approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meeting on August 16th, 2023, and the special Board of Education meeting minutes on August 23rd, 2023.
I'll move for approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meeting on August 16th, 2023, and the special Board of Education meeting on August 23rd, 2023.
This is Crystal, I'll second.
Okay, so we had a motion by Peggy Mueller-Aragon, a second by Board Member Tapia Romero. May I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller-Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, so our next item is public forum, and Secretary Jackson will share the instructions and lead the public forum.
Okay. Welcome to our public forum guests. When you signed up to speak, you were asked to review the rules and expectations which our presiding officer will enforce. The New Mexico Open Meetings Act requires that our agendas specify in advance the items that will be discussed and voted on during the meeting. Therefore, public forum is not a dialogue among speakers and board members, but rather a chance for us to hear from our community. We will call participants to speak in the order they signed up, whether in person or virtual. Those who are here with us tonight will be asked to come to the microphone in the center aisle at the back of the room when your name is called. Online guests will stay in a virtual waiting room until it is their turn to speak. When it is your time, you will be escorted into the main meeting space. Please turn on your audio and video. Once your speaking time is up, you will be ushered back into the waiting room. When you are finished speaking, you may choose to leave the meeting and watch it on live stream. We have set aside 45 minutes for public forum. Because there are fewer than 22 speakers this evening, each of you will have 2 minutes to address the board. Please be concise and try not to repeat what others have said. Tonight, there are 6 speakers and they are all in person. Once your time is up, you'll be directed to complete your sentence quickly so that others may speak. You may not yield your unused time to another speaker. If you do not If we do not get to all the speakers or you feel you were unable to convey your message, you may email the board at boarded@aps.edu. In addition, for those of you who are there tonight, I believe a representative from the Service Center is there to assist you. If you're there, raise your hand because I can't see you. At this time, Mr. Gonzalez, will you please introduce the speakers?
Our first speaker tonight is Bruce Hedquist. Sure, you have 2 minutes once you begin speaking here at the microphone.
Hi, folks. My name is Bruce. I grew up in Las Vegas, New Mexico. It's been to be kind of an old guy now, but I'm really concerned about our children's health and well-being in our schools. It seems to me the schools are not discouraging and even potentially encouraging kids in the regard of gender identity. And I even understand that it may even be without parental notification, and I hope that's not true. I also hear that students are being taught that their gender can be whatever they want it to be. If that's being allowed, whatever happened to reading, writing, and arithmetic, I guess? As an educator, is it not appropriate to teach that and stay there? In other words, it seems to me that as an educator, teaching facts and history are far more important. Why? So they can truly enjoy the quality of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that we have. It seems to me that giving any support for this gender identity thing is going in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Jana Perez. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking. Thank you, ma'am.
Members of the board, thank you for having me here. My name is Jana Perez. I'm going to be talking on the well-being, mental health, and well-being of our children in the APS school districts. Based on CDC's Youth Risk Surveillance Data Summary, in 2021, more than 4 in 10, which is 42% students, felt persistently sad or hopeless, and nearly 1/3, which is 29%, experienced poor mental health. In 2021, also 1 in 5, which is 22% students, seriously considered attempting suicide, and 10% attempted suicide. This data brings me into the focusing into the level of distress of many students that are experiencing these distressful moments, these mental health issues. And nearly half, 45% of the LGBTQ plus students in 2021 seriously considered attempting suicide, far more than heterosexual students. Removing parents and family members from this equation, it creates a volatile environment. And within the CDC, the requirements, the recommendations are that the parents are fully engaged in with the kids in the school districts and not set aside. They are expected to be with the parents and the parents with the kids. It is my request as a grandparent and a grandparent in quotes of the neighborhood. We've got children that I know of that are trying to commit suicide, that are thinking suicide ideations, and it's disturbing to me. It hurts me, and it hurts me that the parents are not allowed to be in the school districts or engaged in the kids, their own children in the schools.
Ma'am, you've got over 2 minutes, so you can wrap up in one quick sentence, please.
I just ask that we please consider our children now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Gregory Spackman. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking, sir.
Well, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. Public schools are much different today than when our children were in school. Math, English, the sciences, history were all taught. We parents attended parent-teacher conferences and participated in our children's education. What a difference today. Education has gone woke. Parents are told they have no part in their children's education. Gender has become an option. Children as young as 11 and perhaps even younger are being asked if they have had anal sex, unprotected sex, oral sex, and sex with transgender men. Is that statutory rape? These questions no child should hear at such a tender age. State law now restricts parents from learning what their children are being taught. Students are encouraged in the classroom to become transgender while keeping this knowledge from their parents. Many schools are building gender closets where students can change their gender identity unknown to their parents. It's no surprise that the math and English scores of our students have dropped precipitously while classroom time is being utilized with transgenderism, non-gender pronouns, and a long list of genders. Please bring the parents back to education. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Marcy May. Hi, you have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing us to have a voice. Actually, it's our right, since we are paying the taxes that pay for our schools and our children. And I want to speak on two different issues that are actually the same because they're related. I want to agree with the other speakers who have been talking about the transgender ideology. And while you might be saying, well, she's just that Christian, she's that rabble rouser, when I'm talking to other parents all across the city, to my Muslim friends, they are very, very upset because APS has made it very clear that their voice as a parent does not matter. And I'm giving you that information because even though this is quote unquote law under HB 7 and the other ones, it doesn't make it right. Slavery was legal, but it was never moral. Frederick Douglass said knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. When we educate our children on the reading, writing, arithmetic, and when we give them the ability to read and to reason and do math, which some may claim to be racist, we cheat them out of life, out of having someone say that they are more important and more knowledgeable than them. When we educate them, we give them tools and empower them to tell other people that they do not have a right to rule over them. My second part that I do want to mention is that there is chatter saying that we are going to be bringing back different mandates, mask mandates. When we had one of you guys, he's not here, but when they were doing the Zoom meetings, we had one person say, the children love the mask. I was never so abhorred in my life. And I'm going to end with this. This is from when they said, this is when they told the children that they did not have to wear masks anymore. And if this comes up in your discussion or there's pressure, I'm going
2 minutes can just have to be the very quick end. Thank you, ma'am.
I hope you never forget that day. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Mary Ingram. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mary Ingham, live in the South Valley, and hello to the board members and president. I also am going to be talking about some of the concerns with the children. one in particular for me is back, many of the people in this room were not born at the time, but in 1973, I went to Crown Point High School on the Navajo Reservation and was able to participate in the first state track meet for girls. So it was everything from JAL and Crown Point on up to Highland High School and the big schools in Albuquerque. But we were, that was the first time that we were given an opportunity to run and jump and as girls. And then after that, I joined the first UNM track team, where we wore the men's sweatsuits and they kind of made a space, for us, but it was the very beginning of that. And we had, it was wasn't really easy to be doing that, but we were really excited and encouraged to do that, or to have a chance to run and jump as women and throw. Anyway, I just am great concern in that area with the transgender movement that our girls at this point are being asked or to have men in the locker rooms and in the bathrooms of schools, and also, related to sports. I think that's unsafe and very, if I were that person, I'd be fearful of the girls having those kind of situations. So I just ask that you would work against that. I hear that it's already happening. We've heard of something in one of the schools where a little girl was going into the boys' bathroom and said that she had every right to be in there, which according to our laws, it looks that way. But I just really hope that we'll all have, be reasonable and realize that we need to protect our girls and our boys, of course. But
Ms. Ingham, you've gone over 2 minutes. Please wrap up in one quick sentence.
we're considering that very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. And our last speaker of the evening is Geraldo Sanello. 2 minutes once you begin speaking, sir.
Good evening, Madam President and school board members, and thank you for serving. My name is Geraldo Sanello, an alternative health doctor and minister. I would like my comments recorded for public record, please. My speech is about protecting children's health and well-being, not about being anti-gay or anti-trans. Gender transition and suicide. It's hard to get solid data because this is so new to all of us. Studies are looking at older generations. There are online detransition groups with 25,000 plus members. Many effects of detransitions are permanent and cannot be reversed. And here are a few of them: misdirected puberty and development, voice changes, mastectomy, genital surgery, sterility, suicide, which is a big lie that parents are being deceived that gender transition will reduce the risk of their child committing suicide. Seriously? According to CDC, 85% of diseases are caused by emotions. Third-year study by PLS1, and I quote, transgender people have a tendency towards lifelong mental health problems. 10 to 15 years after gender reassignment, suicide rate rose to 20 times that of peers. Imagine that transgender people happen to be one of your students or loved ones. Moratorium on transgender treatment for children. There should be no medical gender treatment for children under 18 years old. There should be extensive counseling, therapy, and time required before medical gender transition is undertaken. Laws for and against transgender treatment for children. According to Wall Street Journal, European countries such as Sweden, Finland, and United Kingdom are backing off from transgender treatment for children. With that said, how would you, as our school board members, and even parents, who are perhaps parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc., help save our students from this transgender issue? Are you willing, along with you guys, to protect our children's health and well-being? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board members and Superintendent Eller, that completes public forum.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming in and speak tonight. We appreciate your comments, and we're going to be moving along with our agenda. So our next item is we're going to focus on student outcomes focused governance. And tonight we're going to have a superintendent's report on student outcomes and where we are at this time.
President Montoya, Cordova, members of the board, sort of.
I know, this is our first attempt. So one of the,
Yeah.
just to tell the board, one of the things is I wanted to be able to sort of bring this back a little bit on the superintendent's report, because I know sometimes there are, each of us has interaction with the superintendent, and sometimes it doesn't, the information doesn't come to all of us. This is an opportunity for us to have a conversation with the superintendent all together, and we're listening to information all together.
Take one and pass it down. Yeah, so again, President Montoya Corbin, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Really what I'm going to do tonight is talk about some changes that we've made in terms of the infrastructure of the leadership team. And I'm providing you with an organizational chart that has the various people and then the departments that are reporting to them underneath it. It's a little hard to read. You may have to take it home and put it under the reader, but I'll take you through it tonight. I think there's been some questions about, have I added positions in some way? And I have not. When we have moved people, we have eliminated positions and then created positions off those eliminations. So there's no more people. They're just spread out in a very different way. So you may recall that a couple of weeks ago, I did come to you and I mentioned that we were going to move the zone associates and align them to the goals. So, and at that time, we knew that we had Gene Saavedra, who was going to be working with the elementary students, and he would be goal 1. And we knew that Troy Hughes would be working with the middle school students, and he would have goal 2. Since then, we've done some hiring, so I'm happy to introduce that Mark Garcia is now our goal 3, working with the high schools. You can stand up and wave at him, Mark. They've seen you, but let them know who you are. And someone you may not have met very often is Sherry Jett. She will be in charge of our goal 4, working with those departments specifically. And to that end, we also made a change when we eliminated one position that dealt with the equity and inclusion and support. What we realized was trying to isolate those important concepts in one office really wasn't appropriate. And so we've spread that work out across the associates and into the work of the chiefs that are in charge of that. So for example, we now have a chief academic officer, and that is Dr. Antonio Gonzalez, and him, So yes, we're all very excited. Some of us more than others, but he, it's interesting because he will be taking care of equity, and he'll be working with Title I, Language and Cultural Equity, the Office of Equity, the Student, Family, and Community Supports. He'll also have special ed and curriculum and instruction. So his focus is really going to be on the professional development and support for our teachers and that bank of it. Dr. Segura, who'll be supervising the 3 associates for goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3. And thus you'll have all the principals falling under there and the principal supervisors and some of the departments, including innovation, career-centered learning, athletics and activities, and community schools will be taking care of the leadership development and the professional development for those groups. So that's sort of how we defined it out. Now they work together very, very closely. They meet regularly, and that whole crew is now beginning to develop processes and some very interesting tools to help them drive this work forward. So for an example, each goal associate has formed a team. This team is made up of their principal supervisors, members of the curriculum and instruction department, special education, and SAPR, Richard's strategic analysis plan. Now, these teams are creating scoreboards by which they identify the lead measures that they think are going to have the most impact on us meeting the goals. So as you know, we do use a program to chart our work on the strategic plan that's updated monthly. Internal to that, these guys are following the progress monitor, the measures that they think will have direct impact on the work of the strategic plan, because it's one thing to, again, say we have a plan and, we're going to fix this, we're going to fix that. But how are you going to fix it? Now we're getting into the nitty gritty of the work. And that's what these people are driving. And that's what it's going to look like. We're, obviously still in the infancy, but we are getting much closer. So we're talking about the student outcomes focused governance on the administrative side. That is how we'll have a much better picture and a much better ability to come to you once a month and lay out the data that you're requesting and hopefully show you along the way how we're making the progress towards those goals. Still for a few months into it, but I'm really pleased with the way these guys have jumped in and have really organized themselves in very clear and cohesive ways. So I think it's really appropriate and very helpful. Do you have any questions at this time regarding the organizational chart or where anybody is? If you can't read it, I understand. I can't. I have to take my glasses off and get it real close to my eyes. But I just wanted you to have that because I know we did move some people around just to give you a sense of who's where. And now you've got it in your hands. And so when you write me and say, hey, I've got a problem, you're going to have a sense of who I'm probably going to send it to if there's an issue.
Are there any questions from the board? I mean, I find this really helpful. Thank you for sharing this. This is really great. Are there any questions, comments?
Will this be posted online?
We could, if we somehow get it into a easier to read format, it's just a little, we can do that. Yeah.
It seems good. I'm able to understand it.
I understand it. That's not, it's the seeing part, but yeah, it's just a lot of boxes, but we'll play with it. We certainly can do that.
You have young eyes.
Young ones, yeah.
So with that said, I would like to share just a few thoughts as we've started the year and to catch you up on a few things that have been of a concern. We are at the 20th, we're past the 20th day. As you know, we chart every 20 days. We're starting to look at a lot of data points. And one of those data points is chronic absenteeism. Okay. The last couple of years, as we hit the 20th day, the chronic absenteeism was up at 34% and 33%. This year, it's at 27%. I think we still have a long way to go. That's way too high after 20 days. But it's moving in the right direction. And I think a lot of it is I've visited schools, and I don't know how many schools you've gone out to, but when you visit with the principals, they talk about the kids came back much more ready for school this year, and they have a much better understanding of how school works and how they're expected to behave, and that they really do get they're supposed to be there. We still have problems with kids getting to school. It drives me nuts when I'm driving up, any street and then I see kids at 8:30 wandering towards the high school. I just want to yell, we gave you an hour. So, but I've been on 5 high school campuses at lunch, and I've done lunch duty, and I've talked to the kids and they like it. They like it. Some of them are really getting into the swing of it. But there's always, remember, make a change, it's going to cause some problems, and we have some people who are struggling with that still, but we continue to work with them. Along the lines of getting kids to school, I have a little bit of good news. We have struggled mightily with hiring. We did hire a contractor to help us with our special needs students, and that has not gone as well as we would like, and we may be coming to you soon to discuss our next steps. But in the plus side, we had a little burst of hiring activity last week, and we believe by Friday, every student that has an IEP for transportation will be covered. That they were routing the buses today, and we think we're going to have it. So we had, like I said, as long as we can keep people in the seats, as long as the drivers stay. And again, if you're looking for work, we are looking for a lot of positions, but drivers are first and foremost among them, because we've got a lot of routes we just can't run, and we've had to consolidate. We need at least, I think, another 75 drivers, but at this point we are running as many kids as we possibly can. If you were able to attend the Superintendent's Cup, you had a good time. I'd like to thank the Education Foundation and the volunteer committee led by Mr. Dufay. They did another amazing job. I believe the morning flight was completely sold out, and the afternoon flight was really darn close. They have so many opportunities to donate and for people to participate in fun events throughout the course. But the best part of the Superintendent's Cup, bar none, is that we have the student participation. And that's really been something we've been building up over the last couple of years. I'm very proud of it. I believe the El Dorado Marching Band woke up at least the entire east side of Sandia Casino at 7 a.m. with a rousing rendition of a really rowdy song. And If they tried to take a nap in the afternoon, La Cueva's band made sure that wasn't going to happen either. So, we have the West Mesa JROTC program that comes out, and they are just fun. They make it so much fun. They hosted a little kick the football. And if you kick the football or throw the football, you can get your drive from there. And for people my age, it's really just a matter of don't hurt yourself kicking the football. But they think it is so funny to watch me kick the football. And they're right, it is funny. But they insist I kick it. So I donate and kick, and I did walk away unscathed again. So the really cool thing is they have a drone on one hole, and they get the golf ball with the drone and they fly it to the end of the green, and they try to drop it in the hole. And a year and a half ago, a kid got me a hole in one, and he has not forgotten. Came to the course and he was, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I remember you." And he goes, "I remember you too." So, but it's just great. They really bring a note of fun.
I don't want to, I don't know if you were going to remember to add this in too, but part of the festivities included Board Member Jackson's daughter singing the national anthem, and she did such a beautiful job. I was right there with Board Member Jackson, and I think I cried through the whole thing. But it was stunning. She did a great job, and so it was really wonderful to have her out there.
Yeah, that's in my notes.
I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. She did a great job. For seventh grader, tremendous courage in front of a lot of people outside in the heat. Really sounded nice. Well done. And that's the sort of thing I think that makes our golf tournament unique. The kids, they come in and participate. And of course, finally, I'd like to congratulate the Board of Education and the various departments who both hosted and supported the community celebration at Albuquerque High School and the Education Summit the following morning at Bonifacio. I'd especially like to thank Principal Cesar Hernandez and the Albuquerque High School staff for their work and allowing us to have the enchilada dinner in their beautiful commons. And I certainly want to recognize board services and this IT support staff that set up, cleaned up, took down, really did a lot of the legwork. And I know that's not easy, and it was greatly appreciated because you did a wonderful job. And so thank you all for the work you did. I believe that is my report. I am open for any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions to the report or any questions for the superintendent at this time?
Madam President, so Superintendent Elder, I know you said that the chronic absenteeism was at 27% for the 20th day, which is down pretty significantly from last year. Do you anticipate that will continue through the year, continue going down? I know that's just a guess on your part, but with everything that's in place, do you believe we can continue to get that number?
So here's why I don't think it can go down. And Richard's going to look at me and nod his head, yes or no. I'm either going to be right or wrong here, Board Member Mueller-Aragon. So I'll watch Richard, see what he decides on this.
He's doing yes and
once you're labeled chronically absent, how do you get it off?
stays that way.
How does it get off? Yeah. So I don't see how it gets off. So I think it can only grow. But what I'd like to see is it not grow as much as it did last year. And what we're going to do as part of our progress monitoring is we're going to try to look at, all right, so let's say you have a student who's missed 10 days, they're chronically absent, and we do an intervention. The attendance teams do an intervention. And for the rest of the year, they miss 2 days. Okay. Now I would say problem solved.
But it's not.
But it's still labeled. So this is how we're struggling with some of the progress monitoring that you're asking us for. But we think we can do it, and we think we'll be able to say it has improved. So the number may not improve, but we may know that the results are improving. And maybe, Chris West, maybe have a different way of doing it, and he'll explain to me later. But I will say this, I think it's our second or third year of full attendance teams. I think we're getting better at the interventions we can suggest and provide. And I think the schools are more adapted to utilizing the concept of an attendance team. There's still the inherent barriers for people to get there. And as long as we can, we can remove on our end, makes it better. So we're trying very hard on our end to not be the barrier for our kids.
So then once they're labeled chronically absent, that holds for their entire school year. So if they're fourth graders, it holds for that year, then they start over again next school year when they're fifth graders. Right.
And I don't want anybody to think that there's a scarlet letter. The child walks around with chronic absentee on his back or
We
anything
hope
like
not.
that. Yeah, and it does not follow them from year to year. And I'm really desperately hoping that Richard will give me a signal. He's speak up. Oh, okay, it's too easy. It's not easy. We'll get a report and explain it to you. But I'm telling you, I think we're going to see better results because I think we're getting better at ways to intervene. I think it's still a problem. That's that 27%. Yeah, it's great that it's lower, still too high for 20 days. So we got to work on that.
Thank you.
Board Member Jackson.
Thanks. Yeah, Mike, that's a quick question also in regards to the chronic absenteeism, and it probably can be answered tonight, but I would be curious to know how that 27% compares to pre-pandemic levels, like the 2019 20th day. And Dr. Bowman, I can't see you, but if it's on SAPR, just tell me it's on SAPR. But is 27 an average, or has it been better?
We're going to have to get that for you. He doesn't know it off the top of his head, but we can get it. I think we're going to find that it's still a little higher than it was pre-pandemic. That would be my gut.
Okay.
And the difference is that it sort of seemed to settle down in pre-pandemic. Over the last couple of years, it just kept rolling as a problem. And so what we're hoping is we can eliminate that sort of rolling trend of people missing school.
Go ahead, Board Member. I'm sorry, Board Member Jackson, you're done? Okay, Board Member Peterson.
It does seem like it would be really good if we could see on a overall basis the trajectory for the same kids. You know, the kids that have already missed 10, your suggestion, hopefully we can get that to see if it's declined. And the other thing, and I know this is done sometimes on a school by school basis, where staff tries to do a survey of why kids are missing school. And I know that's how we intervene, is by knowing how and why they've missed school. But I think it would be really informative for us if we could get a vision, an overall picture of that. I don't know what capacity we have for that kind of analysis, but it does get to root cause stuff.
Board Member Peterson, the concept of the attendance team then is that they intervene with the individual student. It's not a survey, it's an actual conversation. What's preventing you from getting here? And then we start to look at what we can do to help. Oftentimes it's transportation. Somebody got sick at home. They had to stay and watch somebody. It's usually what it is. And so we have to work with the family on ways to work around those sort of emergency situations.
Right. And I really appreciate the work that gets done on an individual basis for that. And I know staffs are working really hard for us in terms of, just some budgetary and decision-making stuff, decisions that we have to make. It might be helpful information. And thank you so much for this organizational chart. It's something that I have wanted for a long time, and I really appreciate it being done.
Well, you're welcome. I'd like to thank Dr. Blakey for her diligence in pounding that one through. So.
Great. I'm freezing. I'm sitting here. I'm literally shivering. I'm so cold. Go ahead, Board Member Gonzalez.
I have a question about student outcomes focused governance as it relates to the changes that you've made to the org chart. So you mentioned that the new associates over each goal are working with teams to develop new dashboards and measures. Can you share a little bit more about the time frame for that? Like, when might there be a first draft, and are you anticipating potential changes to the interim goals and guardrails based on this work?
They've already developed their scoreboards. They've already identified lead measures, and they've already begun to collect data around that. Again, we've only been in school for a couple of weeks, so there's not a lot. And that's really for them to chart and hold their people accountable to the work that the larger strategic plan is asking us to do. So it's one thing to say we're going to reorganize this, or we're going to have a great program, but how do you get to the great program? Well, you have to have steps, some measurements to get you there. So this is based off the book study that the cabinet did last year, and the the principals are doing this year, the 4 executions of discipline, and they're utilizing that tool to do that. So they've already begun. So I don't know about timeline. Will there be adjustments? I'm almost positive at some point there'll be an adjustment, hopefully in a very positive way. I don't think the goals will change because those are your goals. I mean, unless you told me you were changing.
No, I was asking about the interims.
It could, I suppose. I suppose we could find something, say, holy cow, this is really a much better interim goal. Do you mind if we take this instead? But we would bring that forward and to show it to you all. Yeah, it was hard. Some of those interim goals are really hard and they're hard to measure, and we're doing the best we can. It's kind of like attendance. Like I'm saying, when the kid's labeled chronic absent, he's never gonna reduce, he doesn't get them back, right? We don't reset the button. But if we can slow it down, if we can show and then have some sort of point that shows, yeah, he was on this trajectory and then he got to this, that's much better. So that's how we're looking at it.
Board Member Dominguez.
Yes, I'd like clarification. So when you say that, where is this child who is chronically absent labeled as such? Is it in our system, or is it in a state system, or both?
Sorry.
Well,
Where is it?
When you say that a child, we can't remove that label from a chronically absent child, and in part because he or she or they have they've reached that.
Yeah, they've missed so many days that they're now in the category. It's not a label, it's really a category of that they fall into. So they're in that category, and you can't unabsence. You can't go back and pick up days. So that's why they can't get out of the category. Year to year, it doesn't track them.
So what you're doing on a year to year then is pretty much hoping that child maybe the next year isn't going to fall into that. But I understand what the superintendent is saying is once they've missed that number of days that puts them into the category of chronically absent, they're just there.
Right.
And that's one of our interim measures. So this go back to Board Member Gonzalez's question. It's really hard to measure. And it's really tough because they're in the category.
Right.
So how do we show improvement for those? We're looking specifically at those kids.
Correct.
And are we seeing improvements because of our interventions with the attendance plan? So that's that's the interim data that we'll be trying to bring forward.
Trying to track next. Okay.
Yeah, that really makes sense because they may still be in the same sort of vulnerable situation that caused them to have high absences in the first place. And if it's getting better, then it means our interventions are working, which means we should continue with the interventions, not take them away.
That's correct.
Any other comments? Okay, I just want to say thank you, Superintendent, for bringing this forward to us too. I appreciate the organizational chart and just the conversation about, where we are at this point and some of the things that we're looking at. I agree in terms of the chronic absenteeism. We do know that if we can't get kids into the classroom, that's really going to also set us back. But it sounds like there's, some strategies going in. And I really appreciate how you've blended equity throughout the entire lens of it, that it's not just a siloed piece, but everybody owns a piece of how equity gets addressed as we're going through all of our goals and looking, in terms of what that means for the guardrails and for the interim work, right? Obviously, it sounds like the associates are putting together their team, looking at what this means, addressing their interim goals. And what I understand from SOFG is, yes, we kind of start where we put our best foot forward and identifying and describing what our goals and our guardrails and our interim goals and guardrails are. But as I've been watching some other boards that are doing their progress monitoring, there's a lot of adjustment. And we're going to, the district's going to have adjustment because that's the commitment that we're making also is to this continuous improvement process, because if it doesn't work, and it's really because we're sort of wedded to the way that we've defined something and it's not quite working, you know, how do we adjust ourselves? And I know that board members Jackson, Dominguez and I had a chance to see an actual board in action who was looking at something and it was like, oh, this didn't quite work out. And I really appreciated viewing that particular process with that board because it sort of made the work very real too, in terms of the, you know, the difficulty of it too. It's not, there is no silver bullet. It's not like that simple. We're just doing the best that we can. We put our best foot forward in terms of how we wanted to describe this work. And we're going to make a commitment to looking at it that way. But if some things are not working out, we're going to probably have to come back and have an honest conversation about this particular measure is really not getting us to the point where we thought it was going to get us, or the way that we're looking at this and measuring it is not necessarily yielding what we thought. But, you know, we've got to kind of stick through the process. I know it's been a learning curve for everybody. And I'm just really proud of the work that we've committed ourselves to and the work that's going on. And I'm especially proud of the organizational work and everyone really embracing themselves around a particular goal, especially because I think that's really where the work is going to be. And I really applaud the decision that you made to reorganize this way.
May I add something?
Sure.
So, because I see this reorganization and the work that we're doing playing out in our schools. So just before I came here, I had occasion to visit one of the elementary schools in District 6. And tonight they're having a parent engagement. So as I was dropping off some things to the community coordinator, and principal happened to come in, and it was like a mini session of what we were doing.
That's awesome.
It was heartening. So
That's great.
Yeah, we had our
Thank you.
first professional development at the school sites yesterday, K through 8, and I got to visit about 4 of them, and it was very interesting, because they're definitely wrapping their heads around this now, and they're trying to do it in a productive way. Yeah, there's still infancy there, but they're working on it, and I do feel good about the commitment. And I will tell you what I hear from my chiefs repeatedly, and what I have heard from principals directly, is the principals are glad that there is just something to point to, and that you have made a commitment for 5 years, and that we're going to stick to it for 5 years. They're really, really excited about that.
Yay, small wins. Those are always good. It's always good to have something that you're feeling good about and you're celebrating, because we do have to celebrate those small wins as we move through the process. So any other board member, Tapia Romero, you have anything to add? Or I think you asked a question. Oh, I can't remember. I'm just freezing. My brain is even getting cold. You're good? Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to our next item, which is an action item. Our next for discussion and action is consideration approval of additional revisions to board policy IH9. And this is about Indian education. We have Jessica Martinez, policy analyst, and Philip Farson, our senior director of Indian education.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder. As the president stated, we have 2 board policies on the agenda this evening, as well as the proposals for the NMSBA 2024 legislative resolution. So starting with board policy IH9, thank you, Sal, can be found starting on page 17 of your agendas. This policy was approved for additional changes at the August 7th, 2023 Policy Committee meeting. In addition, Board Policy IH9 has been reviewed by the Indian Policies and Procedural Directives Committee with minor changes to the language of the policy. These changes are in agreement with the board's desire for more affirmative language regarding the cooperative relationship between the Board of Education and the IPP. I would like to direct your attention to the first sentence because we've received a recommendation from the board to adjust the language in the first sentence to read, "The Board of Education of the Albuquerque Public Schools will recognize the importance of Native American students' traditions and values as they obtain their education." This change does not affect the content or intention of the policy. It is a discussion and action item, and Phil Farson, Senior Director of Indian Education, is here to assist with any questions.
So it was just, the change was just will recognize, and we just said obtain their education at the end, period, punto, no skills and values, just removing that.
Madam President, that's correct.
Okay. Any board comments on that particular change? I think it's a good one. It's very affirmative.
I'll move for approval of IH 9 Indian Education Policy.
I'll second. This is Peggy.
All right, so we have a motion by Board Member Gonzalez, second by Mueller Aragon. I have a roll call, please.
Peggy Mueller Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. All right, so we'll move on to our next item. Thank you, Mr. Farson. That was quick. I know. He was like, yay. So our next item for discussion and action is consideration approval of revision, including renaming of board policy KL3, which is restaurant liquor license waivers, to KL3 restaurant liquor license waivers and cannabis sales. And our policy analyst, Jessica Martinez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Say that 3 times quickly. So this policy can be found on page 20 of your packet. It has been updated to include the state statutes restricting cannabis sales within 300 feet of a school or child daycare facility. The name of the policy has also been updated to reflect this change. There are board recommendations for this policy, the first being a change to the title of the policy so that it will read restrictions to restaurant liquor license waivers and cannabis sales. The second board recommendation is a change to the last sentence of the policy to read, "These sales and the granting of such a waiver would increase the risk to students and staff of encountering persons under the influence of a controlled substance to the slightest degree who may potentially interfere with or negatively impact the instructional process and would increase the danger of vehicular accidents within the walk zones surrounding the school." This is a discussion and action item, and I'm available to respond to your questions.
So I'll open it up for any questions.
Could you just say the title again, the proposed title change?
Madam Chair, Board Member Peterson, yes, the change to the name would be restrictions to restaurant liquor license waivers and cannabis sales.
I'll move for approval.
I
I'll
would
second.
like
This is Danielle.
some
Okay, so we have
conversation about some of that language.
wait, we'll go, let me say, so, but first we have a motion on the table by Board Member Peterson and we have a second by Board Member Gonzalez, and you still have a discussion. Go ahead.
That is the most unwieldy sentence. You can't, like, what is the purpose of, what are we trying to accomplish? And I sent in an email about this, so let me pull up my,
So I just want to be really clear too on this particular, all we're doing is basically where we can provide a waiver, but it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily mean it will occur, correct?
Madam President, we don't provide the waiver.
Waiver-
The waiver comes
that's
from
from-
the city. So all this policy is doing is saying that we are in opposition to any waiver that would be provided. And in a.
Oh, okay, so, okay,
And
so,
and there you have it. Punto. That's it. Just that simple. That
So-
we are opposed instead of, go
all of
ahead
this-
and read, let me find my, APS will not grant a liquor or cannabis license under any circumstance.
well, we
don't
can't issue
do that.
licenses.
Or what, right, or
We
so
will
we
oppose.
will oppose,
oppose.
APS will oppose a liquor or cannabis license under any circumstance, period.
But it does say, it says Albuquerque Public Schools shall oppose in all cases.
But, okay, in all cases, and then it just goes on, and then you have a clause that refers to a who that refers to a degree. It doesn't make sense, and it does not reflect well on us to have that language. That's all.
Madam Chair, as just a point of order, I mean, I think the policy is clear. If there are semantic or grammatical errors, I think we've agreed that we would leave those to the staff going forward.
Okay. That's fine. And I emailed some
Madam
suggestions.
President, Board Member Dominguez, thank you for that. Yes, it's a very easy fix. I appreciate the feedback. This is this language is as it appears on the site now, so I'll be very happy to go back and chop it up a little bit and make it a little neater.
That's all.
But aren't we voting at the language that's written here?
With the changes, right?
Right. With these changes?
Yes, that's the motion on the table is the language as written.
Yeah.
I hear Board Member Jackson saying as written. Is that correct?
Well, the motion is what's before us is the language that's being proposed to us, and that's what we've got a motion and a second on that. We could take a vote and it's specifically to what's on here. And then those that are not in agreement would vote however you want to vote. But right now we have a motion based on the language that's before us. Go ahead.
Can we just make a friendly amendment and do it in a way so that we're all clear, but from parliamentary procedure, we should be able to do that. And I think that it would become clear if we simply led with the sentence that says, or the phrase that says, Albuquerque Public Schools shall oppose in all cases alcohol or cannabis sales, which could be authorized by the state law sales.
You start getting.
No.
Yeah.
We need to, will, and I would say APS will oppose granting.
Well, I mean, I think
in all cases, it does.
we don't have, I mean, I think where we are right now is we don't have enough. I don't think we have a clear friendly amendment at this point. So I'm not hearing a clear friendly amendment. What I do feel is that what's in front of us, although it's jargony, I think it's got a lot of words in it for sure. But what's important in there is it says Albuquerque Public Schools shall oppose. So, I mean, a friendly amendment, if you want, is Albuquerque Public Schools will oppose instead of shall oppose in all cases, alcohol or cannabis sales. But I mean, it is jargony. There's a lot in there. And we had this opportunity to look at this one. Is this the first read on this one?
Madam President, it's an existing policy. This is just a change.
We just added cannabis in there, right? Okay.
Okay, Ms. Martinez, can you just read to us what exactly it is that we're voting on again? I mean, you had given it to us earlier, but can you just read it to us?
Madam
Please.
President, Board Member Mueller-Aragon, you're asking me to give you the language as it would appear with the revisions. Is that correct?
So it's the one, Board Member Mueller.
The one that we just got earlier.
Yeah, it's the one that's in our packet.
Right.
As read. Would you like for me to read it? I could also read it. It's
Whoever.
I'm happy
Okay.
to read it. All right, it
With the
is
change.
KL3 restrictions to restaurant liquor license waivers and cannabis sales. As authorized by state law, the sales of alcoholic beverages and cannabis may not be located within 300 feet of a school, church, or child daycare facility. Albuquerque Public Schools shall oppose in all cases the granting of any waiver to a restaurant for the purpose of allowing the sales of alcoholic beverages within 300 feet of a school site in which instruction of students normally takes place. These sales and the granting of such a waiver would increase the risk of students and staff of encountering intoxicated persons under the influence of a controlled substance to the slightest degree, who may potentially interfere with or negatively impact the instructional process and would increase the danger of vehicular accidents within the walk zones surrounding the school.
Okay, so then we have intoxicated in there, but then we're talking about alcohol and cannabis. So with alcohol, is that how the law is written? Like what would it say? Like if you're on cannabis, are you intoxicated? Or
Madam President, Board Member Otagon, we'd have to defer to
Right,
legal
yeah,
on
that's
that one.
fine.
I'm not an expert. And
But it's talking about sales. It's not talking about people.
yeah, so, Madam President, if I may, I think if what we are trying to do is just to trim this down to say we oppose the waiver and we oppose the cannabis sales, then we can just bring this back to the table with an opposition on those
Simple.
topics, right?
We have a motion.
Yeah, we do. Well, and if I may, another friendly amendment would just be to strike that last sentence. The sales and granting, describing why, just take that out so that it's just the state law, sales, blah, blah, blah. Albuquerque Public Schools shall oppose in all cases, all of these, which, to that part where it says which instruction of students normally takes place, period, and strike that last sentence. The intention of our policy, go ahead, Board Member Jackson, that's like, our parliamentarian, because we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second on the floor is the first thing that I wanted to bring up. There have been several attempts at a friendly amendment, but I'm not sure that everybody agrees with the friendly amendments that are being proposed. So I would almost feel that third, we had an opportunity to send in these amendments earlier, and there were amendments made to the policy based on feedback that she already received, and this is already a change of what the original policy was. So my suggestion would be to vote on the motion on the floor that's already there with the language as she just read. If anybody is opposed to that, then vote it down, and then we can come back with the policy with the amendments that have been discussed. But I mean, for example, I'm totally fine with the policy as she just read it. So I don't think that we need a friendly amendment.
All right. Any other discussion? I'm going to call for the vote.
Peggy Mueller Aragon,
no.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
No, because of the lack of clarity.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. So the motion carries. All right. So let me get myself here. Our next discussion and action is consider approval for the resolution submitted to the New Mexico School Boards Association for consideration for the association's 2024 legislative platform. And you guys again, except with Dr. Escobedo here. So it's Jessica again with Dr. Escobedo. I'm sorry, I should have said Jessica Martinez. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, President. Next, we have consideration of approval of the resolutions to be submitted to the New Mexico School Board Association in support of the NMSBA's 2024 legislative platform. These are located on page 24 of your packets. To be clear, these resolutions are submitted in support of the NMSBA's legislative platform and are not the formal declaration of the district's legislative priorities and resolutions. We have provided a draft of the IPS legislative agenda for your information. It's there on your desks. And you can provide us with your thoughts on other agenda items tonight or through email. The first resolution is technology device funding, which calls for the state to develop and consistently fund technology devices for all students. The second resolution is the behavioral health pipeline and school reimbursement, which requests that the state examine the reimbursement process for schools and districts for behavioral health services provided for students. The next resolution is educator retirement and compensation, which encourages the legislature to ensure that out-of-pocket costs for dependent premiums do not increase as a result of decreases to the employee costs. And finally, The last resolution is entitled Emergency Funding for HVAC Upgrades, wherein APS supports the provision of emergency state funding to convert outdated and ineffective swamp coolers. We have received a board recommendation that the fifth point be removed from the resolution as it was provided by the NMSBA and not by our staff. Also, it was pointed out that the resolution language makes it sound like AC and HVAC are different, when in fact they are the same thing. We recommend eliminating the seventh whereas paragraph calling for converting swamp coolers to refrigerated air and changing the language of the therefore paragraph to read, therefore be it resolved that the Albuquerque Public Schools Board of Education supports the provision of emergency state funding to convert outdated and ineffective cooling and heating systems at schools and district work sites. These resolutions are discussion and action items, and Dr. Escobedo and I are here to assist with any questions that you have.
Okay, so I'll open it up for questions before we move to just a motion for approval. Any questions on those? Because these are for NMSBA, and we're just taking action that we approve these to be part of that inclusion with NMSBA, that we're on board with these resolutions that they have.
So I
Go
don't
ahead.
have a question about the resolutions, but how does that relate to the document on our desks, the legislative agenda? Is that coming next?
Madam President, Chairmember Gonzalez, the one on your desk is the district's proposed. This is for NMSBA.
So the resolutions, Madam President and Board Member Gonzalez, the resolutions you'll see are included in your legislative agenda. So if you pass those resolutions, you're acknowledging that that's something you'd like us to advocate for. And so we've added language to your legislative agenda. We're also seeking input from you on what other items you would like us to include. I think somebody included class sizes, so we wrote that as a proposed draft.
Thank you for that. That helps. That was my second question. So what is the process then for informing and determining our legislative agenda? And then what's the time frame for that?
So we're starting the discussion tonight. We'd like to come back in October and finalize in November with you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Board Member Peterson.
So some of these, and I totally support the ones that have been presented. Some of them may still be deemed already existing in the NMSBA platform, in which case what that committee does and what the body as a whole does, the NMSBA, just says these were presented, the committee decided that they were already existing, but I don't think it ever hurts because it just brings back up to the top the concern. And I think that one of the things that helps clarify, because the NMSBA is statewide, so it's issues that every district needs to be able to deal with in the same way. So an example for what might be in the NMSBA platform versus ours, and this is hypothetical, but NMSBA might say, we believe in local control for the way we determine minutes and hours and days. What we might say is we have a pilot program called TOPS that we are finding to be beneficial for our students. And so as APS, we approach that as a specific remedy for that, but it wouldn't be appropriate to do it at the NMSBA because some districts would say that doesn't apply to us.
Okay, and so on the legislative agenda for our district, be coming back and we'll take a review at that point. So this is just a first read for us on some of the potential. Okay, so I can't remember. Do I have a motion? Oh, good question. Okay, okay.
So on the part where we're talking about technology device and connectivity funding, and I noticed the verbiage in there again goes back to ensuring that all elementary and secondary school, kind of everyone has a device. And I know we've had conversations in the past where we're saying we're trying to move away from like our elementary kiddos, everyone being on, on a Chromebook or things of that nature. Is that still in the talks? But this looks like we're still trying to push for that.
So specifically what we're requesting, Board President, and Board Member Tapia Romero, is really looking for the state to develop and consistently fund devices and then leave it up to us as to how we would implement that through your and our strategic plan. So to answer your question, if that's what you've heard from technology and Dr. Bowman, then we would support that. We're just trying to ensure that there's consistent funding.
Okay.
Because right now there's not a consistent pot, and $3.5 billion in excess revenue next year.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so just a point of order, where am I? I don't have a motion on this yet, do I? Okay. I'd entertain a motion on this particular item.
So I will move that we approve, let me find the action report, that we approve the resolution submitted to the New Mexico School Board Association for consideration for the association's 2024 legislative platform.
Do I have a second?
This is Crystal, I'll second.
All right, so motion by Board Member Peterson, second by Tapia Romero. I'll have a roll call, please.
Patty Mueller-Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. Okay, so our next item is a discussion item. And this is an update on calendar year 2024 medical, pharmacy, dental, and vision trends and projections. Our presenters are Todd Torgerson, Chief of Human Resources and Legal Support Services, Valerie Atencio, Senior Director, Employee Benefits Wellness Leaves, Eric Weinstein with Aon, Executive Vice President James Dickey also with Aon, and Todd Burley, the Financial Manager with Aon. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time tonight. As noted on the agenda, and as you just indicated, you introduced the team that we have tonight. We are going to discuss our benefit rate changes and also our trends. Aon Consulting has been contracted with the district by way of an RFP for actuarial work, our commercial risk work, as well as benefits consulting. Aon has a national and international presence and a local office here run by Executive Vice President Eric Weinstein to my right. He'll be doing the presentation here shortly. As I share annually with this, it is essential really to recognize and remember that we're fully self-insured. We are not in the claims payment business. We are in the claims payment business. We're in the benefit provider business. And so that's the theme of our presentation here tonight, ensuring we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure now and going forward that we can pay our claims. This is illustrated on slide 10. Also, real quick, we have the APS Benefits Committee certainly wishes and maintains a certain balance with respect to our fiduciary concerns and our responsibilities for our employees as well. As noted on slide 7, when we get into this presentation, all APS employees will maintain 79% of their raise. Those employees that are with single coverage will maintain 92% of the raise. The Benefits Committee's guiding principles are to continue to offer choice and value to our employees, to simplify the district's plans offerings, certainly to reduce our claims costs, ensure that we can pay claims as part of our fiduciary responsibility going forward. The committee believes that the recommended action tonight by Aon certainly complies and comports with those recommendations and those guiding principles. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Aon team. Eric.
Thank you, President Montoya Cordova and members of the board. Good evening. I'm Eric Weinstein, New Mexico market leader for Aon, and we play an important role in the benefits consulting and advisory space in New Mexico, both for private and public employers. It's my pleasure, along with James Dickey and Todd Burley, to present once again to this board and for Aon to represent Albuquerque Public Schools. So if we move to the next slide, we'll dive into the material. This is a overview. There it is. This is the overview slide on factors facing employers relative to healthcare costs. It's not New Mexico nor APS specific, but it illustrates a bit of what's changed since we last met a year ago and what we're seeing down the road. The points on this slide that I want to call out is obviously we have high core inflation, and that's having and will continue to have an impact on healthcare inflation. Healthcare inflation, or the cost of increased cost of medical care in the future, is expected to be 8% or higher over the next few years. And then as we see as wage increases moderate and core inflation persists, this can lead to challenges in the ability for employees to afford the rising cost of healthcare. And then as the economy cools, this can lead employers challenged with buffering healthcare cost increases, potentially putting more stress and financial burden onto employees. So this all adds up ultimately to a very, very challenging situation, both for employers and for employees. And this is the world in which we consult in every day. I will move it forward one more slide to talk about COVID. And while COVID is not dominating the headlines, obviously, like it was 2 years ago, there are still impacts that APS is and will be feeling from COVID and COVID related legislation. So 3 kind of key points coming off this slide. COVID had some waves and impacts on your claims experience going back to 2020. And more specifically, we saw the deferred care and suppressed care start to really come through in 2022 and into 2023. And as we use that data, so we saw claims increase in a significant manner, and then we take those claims and we project those into 2024. So that COVID suppression and claims coming through later than anticipated is having an impact on your projection in the future. There's still unknowns. The second point is probably still unknowns about what COVID waves might look like, although we have not and are not pricing any significant waves into our pricing for 2024 at this point. And lastly, the high inflation and wage inflation that followed us out of the pandemic and that impacted healthcare organizations has had a meaningful impact on the cost of healthcare and medical trends specifically, adding additional pressure to trend as we move forward. And we'll talk about that. We talked about the higher trend on the last slide and what we were expecting. And part of that is that high inflation and healthcare inflation as well. On the slide you see here, these are just, this is kind of the last slide we have specifically on COVID. We're reporting the amount of members with a COVID test, although the total cost associated with those members dropped from 2021 to 2022. This is the amount that APS paid. Members were not responsible for costs associated with testing or vaccines. Some of this will be changing, and we'll talk about that. I do think these are interesting numbers, but truly the bigger cost of COVID is the suppressed claims that we saw in 2022, 2023, and what'll be moving forward. And we'll talk about the vaccine and testing in just a moment. On the next slide, we have, I'll point you to some key takeaways, 4 of them off of this slide, but just to orient you, the top 2 charts are actually per member per month, or PMPM claim charts. You may also see PEPM as per employee per month. The bottom line on the top 2 charts is that your claims continue to increase at a steady upward pace. You can see that per member per month, hopefully you can see the per member per month cost increasing in 2021 from about $400, and it ends the year around $500. There's some seasonality to it, but then we start 2022 and it drops back down to $450 and ends around $600. Ultimately, we've got a pretty steady increase of claims that I was describing earlier. However, the next set of charts below those are your enrollment. We are seeing a decline in enrollment on the plan. So your plan experienced a 5% decrease in enrollment from 2022, from 2021 into 2022. So in a sense, you have a combination of claims increasing and enrollment decreasing. And that kind of comes together in the bottom box, third one over, total per employee per month cost of $1,034 per employee per month. And that was up almost 10% from the prior year. All of this factors into the renewal calculation and some of the renewal figures, which we'll talk about on the next slide. If I take your focus to the bottom of this page in the gray bar with the white font, we have total projected cost increases for your medical and pharmacy program at 9.8%. That's going up from 88.4 million to 97.1 million, or about an $8.7 million increase to total cost. That breaks down in the following way. If we want to go back to the top of that data chart, the administrative fee is going up 1.6%. This is the fee that you pay to Presbyterian, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Cigna to administer your program. The second line is the stop loss premium that you pay to Tokyo Marine, HCC. This protects you from large claimants in any given year. So it's an insurance protection for your self-insured plan. We're projecting that at 20% increase. We do not have that renewal. We'll receive that renewal later this year. Stop loss is always finalized in the fourth quarter of the calendar year. That's the amount that's been built into our renewal projection. So when you add administrative fees and individual stop loss, you have your total fixed cost going up just under 5%. I think the highlight here is that your fixed costs are almost 7% of your total cost. So the big portion, 93%, are the medical and pharmacy claims that your members are incurring. And those are projected to increase into 2024 at 10.2%, or an increase of 8.4 million. When we break down a little bit, if we were to sort of take the $8.7 million increase and break that down into what's responsible for what, it's kind of on the right to some extent. We've got your medical trend that's increasing at 5.4%. We have some legislative impacts or mandates that will add that are adding 1.3 million, and the COVID suppressed claims and COVID inflation collectively are adding 2 million into that number. And then lastly, before I leave this page, the bullets at right above the chart, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but that $8.7 million increase is split between what APS pays and what your employees pay through paycheck deductions. Your share of that is just about 6.6 million, and the employees are 2.1 million. There was a legislative change in New Mexico that's increasing that shift to APS by $800,000. So that's $800,000 higher than otherwise would have been without that legislative change. And the share that APS is paying in aggregate is 66.4% of the total cost, or 64.4 million. And then that always leads to the next slide, a question we often get and that we reviewed with this board last year. What does a 9.8% increase in medical premiums mean, given that we have salary increases? And the fact is they're not on the same magnitude. So we like to show this chart so that you have an idea of, Mr. Torgerson talked about it at the beginning, but this chart showing that, well, in one sense, if you gave a 6% raise and you did not increase medical contributions at all these numbers would be 100%. They'd retain 100% of their raise. This is showing you what happens with the 6% wage increase and a 9.8% medical premium increase. And as mentioned, at the very least, they're retaining at least 79% of their pay increase. And as you can see from this chart, there's many in the mid 80s and 90s percent of pay retention. Here's also the salary bands are listed in the last bullet point of this slide and on another slide. On the next slide, I do want to touch on a couple of the legislative impacts that I mentioned that are being put into place. There's Senate Bill 51 addressed some pharmacy issues around copay accumulator plans. and drug coupon plans, and those are estimated to impact the plan by 300,000. House Bill 27 around mammogram coverage and payment for those coverages will impact the plan by 330,000. And the COVID vaccines, which will now be paid for by APS, we're estimating an impact of $660,000. And then House Bill 273, behavioral health, we're not actually anticipating an impact. There's a potential there could be one. We have it listed as 0 to 200,000. We've incorporated 0. When we take the 300, the 330, and the 660, we get the 1.3 million that we instituted into your renewal. And then lastly, there's the end of the public health emergency, and employee cost shares for testing is being instituted as allowed for by the end of the public health emergency. And this is an expense members will now pay when seeking testing and non-preventative care related to COVID. I think on the next page, I've covered House Bill 533 around the salary bands, the fact that you'll still be paying 80, 70, and 60% respectively. It's just at what salary level that you'll be paying that. And what the chart in the middle shows is that there'll be more people where APS is paying 80%. There'll be more people where APS is paying 70%, and fewer people where you're only paying 60%. Because you're paying more for those individuals, that's where the $800,000 comes from that you'll now be paying that you weren't under the prior salary tier structure and contribution structure. We show the next slide every year, and this is the 5-year projected fund balance. I think the primary point on this slide, you keep a fund to pay for your incurred but not reported claims, as well as a claim fluctuation reserve, really a program to make sure that you have the funds to pay for all claims that may come your way. After increasing 9.8% in 2024, what you see to keep you in that gray bar, which is above the floor and below the maximum, we need to increase those the premiums 8% a year. And with that assumption, I think it's important for the board to know, the second to last bullet point, we're at roughly 97 million projected into 2024. That would be estimated to be about 128 million or $31 million higher if we take that out at 8% a year. And that is our challenge, and that is what we'll work towards bettering as we move forward with healthcare cost increases and affordability for the plan and for the members. Lastly, there's a couple of enhancements to the vision plan, increase in frame allowance and contact lens allowance. These are benefits to the members, to the employees. And because of how the plan's funded and its funding status, we don't have to increase rates, so we can improve the plan and not increase the rates. And that is going into effect. And that's a quick summary of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. With that, I'd be remiss if I didn't get a shout out to our benefits and wellness folks. We have our wellness fair coming up. It's going to be October 3rd and 4th. Come one, come all. We'd be happy to see you all there. 2:30 to 6 p.m. Bonifacio. We'll be going over switch enrollment, changes in the plans. We'll have mammograms, blood drive, dental and vision screenings, and all the good work. So it'll be good fun. So come one, come all. We'll have this time for questions.
Okay. Any questions? This one is always a heavy one. It's a lot of information. I know, and I just want to thank Board Member Mueller-Aragon for all your questions, because that helped with just sort of setting some of the context for some of the information. So is there?
Thank you. A lot of that in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still oh my goodness, like an 8%. I mean, I just kind of think how can we keep doing that? You know, I just don't know like how APS can keep covering that, and then how the taxpayers can cover the other part? Like, how can you do that? If if wages are not growing, but yet healthcare costs are, I honestly don't know how we do it. And I know you probably can't answer that question as I saw, you know.
We're here to help you try.
Well, there you go. Well, and in that context, and in the light, you know, looking at an 8% annual increase, looking at the rule of 72, that's going to double in 9 years. So it will be an ongoing issue. It is something that we will have to address. And it is something that we will have to seek funding and continued funding for.
Yeah. I mean, we have you as consultants to help us with that somehow, right? To give us, consult us in the right
Yes,
direction.
I have a lot
like-
of VPs of Aon sitting next to you, big brain, so they're going to work on it now.
A big brain to help us figure it out.
Certainly.
I mean, it was certainly, I'm appreciative of the, you know, the quality of the healthcare that we can, you know, just the benefits that we do make available to our staff for sure. At a time, there was once a time when, you know, I was covered under this particular plan because my husband carried that, and it was a very generous plan, definitely helped us through a real difficult time. And we were really grateful to have, you know, healthcare insurance at that time when he was going through, you know, his rigorous treatment and all of the stuff that we had to do for his cancer diagnosis. And so I can only imagine, I mean, and that was, you know, and it was spot on. I mean, we definitely had really good services and we were covered as a family. So I really appreciate the benefits that we do make available to our staff.
It's still a very robust plan.
Yeah. So it's always good to have nice benefits.
So how does this compare? How do we compare nationally? Is this the situation for everyone? 8%. And I understand that our benefits are generous.
Yeah, Board Member Dominguez and members of the board. The average increase that we're seeing nationally is about 7.5%. And that fluctuates by plan and by certain circumstances. So each one's a little bit different as we look at it. But if you were to ask me for an average, that would be the average I would give you right now for what we're projecting for 2024. I think your increase came in a little bit below. If we look back 1 year, it's coming in a little bit above. If we look at this year, given your size, you should track pretty close, notwithstanding any initiatives that are put into place or other legislative changes. Close to that average. And so I think the legislative changes of 1.3 million took you probably right over that average.
Coupled with the suppressed claims of 2 million too.
Right.
So could you explain that? What suppressed claims?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. During 2020 and into 2021, there was a number of members that maybe did not seek care for routine care or put off voluntary surgeries that they then sought later. And that later hit a little later for APS than some other entities.
Okay. Yes, it's all coming back to me.
So last, I would just ask again, what would be your advice? Like, I know you said, I mean, we obviously have a very generous plan and maybe there are other districts or other government entities that don't have such a generous plan. You would not advise us to not have a generous plan because obviously that helps us keep our employees. So I'm assuming that would not be something you all would advise. Hard question, I know, but I mean, I'm looking at 30.8 million between FY23 and 27, and that's big, you know?
I can answer this with respect to your friendly and helpful Chief of Human Resources looking to recruit staff and retain our employees. It is not a benefit.
Yes,
to ensure that we have a robust and competitive benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I would just assume that was true. It's like, that's a smart thing to do, but then we have to think about the money part of it too. It doesn't come without having the money.
Would come without having good staff. You know, I would be worried about that and really being able to protect our work around student outcomes and, you know, the work that we're doing at HAMP. But I just want to say thank you so much for the robust information and the information. Unless there's other questions, I'm going to move us along. But I appreciate the context and all of the information and your generosity in answering some really hard questions. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next item that I'm just gonna do a brief president's report. One is I just wanted to first acknowledge the family and community celebration dinner and summit. We had about 200 family members, students, staff attend the event at Albuquerque High School on August 29th, which featured information on the goals, guardrails, and the strategic plan, along with entertainment by the Albuquerque High School mariachis and their marching band. And I think we also had their dance team out there. So a shout out to all of our students and parents that came to that. Really grateful to Principal Hernandez and the Bulldogs for hosting and all that helped, and the more than 160 people who attended the next day's summit, including the robust conversations about improving student outcomes. So thank you to board members too for attending those sessions. I just got a couple of comments that I wanted to read. One, it was from an individual said, I was impressed with the out-of-the-box thinking that I observed that day. I think you and the APS board are on the right track. That was another one was, I implore you to engage parents in the monthly student achievement reporting that the board has committed to. They will bring the leadership and urgency needed to move the district forward. And best of luck on the school year. You all have a great plan to implement, and I agree with that. I think just the sentiment was very positive. I wanted to also just give a quick and a very brief update on the superintendent's search and where we are with that. The evaluation committee is now reviewing the proposals for a search firm and recruiting firm. We hope to have a firm on board by the end of the month for sure. So we are on track to choosing a new superintendent in March, which is where we're still heading towards that, and onboarding in the spring and ready to hit the ground running on July 1st. We're looking forward to a search firm that's willing to work closely with the board to develop a job announcement based on community input, our SOFG, and our strategic plan. And the executive committee will continue to take a lead once a firm is selected. We'll continue to take this lead right now where we are in terms of reviewing proposals and getting that part firmed up. But once the firm is selected, the entire board will be engaged to discuss a plan and final timeline through selection of the next superintendent. So just let us get the search on firm on board, and then we'll be coming with that proposal for everybody to review where we are but we're still on track. I just wanted to remind the board that next week, we have an important in-person workshop with our coach from the Council of Great City School to address board norms, continued community engagement, policy data, and the board work associated with the superintendent search. We are going to have a conversation about all those. So I would encourage all of you to schedule a one-on-one time with Ashley to discuss any questions or concerns or suggestions that you might have for that. That will help us. Your one-on-one time is important and could be helpful as you prepare for the work ahead, and anticipate some reading materials from Ashley prior to the meeting. So she's supposed to be sending something out. On Monday, September the 18th, the policy committee will meet to continue its work on the governance manual and policy diet, which is fitting because that's going to be right after this little workshop. We'll also get our first look at the budget policy. And on Wednesday, September 20th, we're going to monitor goal 3, which is on post-secondary readiness. So board members, watch for your email. I know that the monitoring reports and the question deadline is going to be coming out really soon here. So we're hitting up to that point where they're going to get stuff to us really early so that we have time to do that. And then on September the 27th, we have a finance committee. I don't know. I know I did send out, if committee chairs, if you want to add anything, any additional comments or reminders for the board members, your floor is open for you right now at this point.
Well, we finally solidified that date, so we'll be meeting on the 20th.
Right.
For our first meeting. And then hopefully we'll be able to have, things moving forward and what our plan is for the policy.
Perfect. I know I saw that finally got scheduled, so that's good. Board Member Gonzalez, I think is good, right? You want to add anything? Go ahead.
Well, just briefly, just to sort of forecast the rest of the anticipated policy committee priorities coming up. So you mentioned that in September 13th, we're going to be talking about the board norms, guardrails, and the governance manual. So any changes that we decide to make that have implications for board policy or procedural directive, the B policies, those will then need to come forward through policy committee and subsequent meetings. So assuming that there are changes that we make, those will be discussed during our September 13th training. And then the next policy committee meeting for which those could be on the agenda is October 2nd.
Okay.
So it's that October 2nd meeting. And then if we make changes during that committee, they'd go to consent for a subsequent board meeting in November. So those are sort of the short-term priorities for the policy committee, is really just addressing those B policies.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's see, I'm moving right along. The other thing that we have is we have a board candidate forum that's also coming up. And this is a reminder that this will take place here September the 25th on a Monday. The District 2 forum will be from 5 to 6 p.m. and the District 1 and 4 forum will be from 6:30 to 7:30. So the board office is also working on gathering the information for the candidate profiles, and those will be posted in the next week or so. The election, again, is November the 7th, which is just 2 months away. Board candidate forum coming up. Also, just want to do a quick reminder to the board that we're the hosts for the NMSBA regional meeting on October the 11th. We're going to be hosting this at the Bonifacio Development Center. I don't never know what to call it, but that's what I'm going to call it. So calendar invites were sent to hold the date. Been talking with Johanna and our board staff in terms of some of the items that we're going to do there. It's just a reminder that this is not an agenda that we have to run. The association runs the agenda. We're strictly the hosts, but it's going to be an opportunity for us to kind of showcase some of our APS greatness. So have some exciting items coming up. We're just in the beginning stage of that. I believe Johanna just got some instructions from NMSBA, so we'll be sharing that with the board. And then just a reminder to the board members, please share your meeting absences with Johanna. She will communicate with the rest of the board. And also, just please share materials, resources, and other information that you come across to help enhance some awareness and understanding of public school issues and concerns with all of us as a board. It's really helpful. I appreciate some of the deep dives everyone else does when I don't have a chance to, and I will do that. So I owe everybody a penny because I have a penny in my pocket because I haven't always done that. So I'm going to give each of you a penny because this is part of our SOFG mindset. So there you go. How's that, Josefina? I got some pennies.
7 pennies.
7 pennies out.
7 up on me.
And then I just want to let the board know, I'm not going to be in attendance at the Finance Committee on the 27th. My daughter is getting married and I have guests arriving on that day. So additionally, I will be in Portland beginning October the 1st through the 6th because I will be Mima in charge of my grands. So wish me luck. I'm going to have to take them to school and everything. It's going to be really interesting. So more than likely, I will not be linking to the regular board meeting on Wednesday, October 6th as well, but I'm going to play that by ear. We'll see how well I'm doing. And that's all I have for President's report. And if you have any questions, I stand open for questions. None? Hearing none?
Courtney has her hand up.
Oh, Courtney has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just had a quick question regarding the candidate forum. I recall from 2 years ago, like we had very standard questions that we were asked. Who comes up with those questions? Is that something that the current board comes up with? Who decides those questions?
I don't remember how those questions came up. We'll have to circle back because I don't remember. We didn't write them, so.
There was a open ask, Dr. Albright's here, put out to the community to suggest questions, but I'll let her speak to it.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. There was an open ask to the community. The questions were gathered. They were sorted so that similar questions could be asked as one. So they basically came from the people who were there that night.
So it comes from the participants in the room.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And they know, like we knew them beforehand, but you're saying this is like show up and you're just taking questions from the floor?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
I remember it being that way when I ran because it was, oh, you guys were on Zoom. That was different. So I remember when I was running in a candidate forum, we got the questions on the spot that night. So you just have to be ready it's kind of like your stump speech. You got to be ready.
The format is each one has 2 minutes? of introduction for themselves. So they have a specific amount of time at the beginning that they should be prepared for, and a specific amount of time for a conclusion, but all of the questions come from the audience.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So we've worked really hard on this student outcomes focused governance model, invested a lot. There's some level of expectation. There's a high level of expectation that these candidates plug in.
Well, what I would commit to do is I'll work with Ashley and ask her if there's like, a good question that could come that's focused around SOFG so that we can have that posed as one of the questions. I don't see why that couldn't be included along with what's being asked from the audience. To me, the constituents are really important because this is their candidate forum. It's really not directed by us as a board. The constituents, this is who they're going to be listening to and selecting. But we could easily, I think we could agree or come up with a question. I could share it with all the board, and maybe even by next week when we're all together, we can have that question that we could all agree on. That would be a good question to ask.
Madam President, we also sent out questionnaires to all the candidates, and we did include SOFG style questions.
Oh, nice. Good. And those are coming up to be posted soon. And we did, just a reminder, we did do the candidate orientation, Barbara, and I got to do that with the candidates, and it was heavy SOFG. So we did talk about our process and where we are. So we did give them an opportunity to hear the context.
So I'm just thinking of those 2,000 participants that came to our community engagement. I don't know.
It's usually not that many
No,
in
right.
the candidate forums in person, because as I recall, I know Peggy, we did ours at Bonifacio and the room wasn't full. So
Right. I'm getting at the voice of those 2,000. So, let me think about formulating this question. So did we just ask, how did it go out to people that they should send in questions for?
No, the questions are sent out for the individuals that show up to the candidate forum. They have the opportunity to submit, what question would you like to be asked tonight? It's not just send it out to the masses. We've invited individuals to come to the
So we
forum.
did
Yes.
invite.
Madam President, Board Member Dominguez, we will work with communications to get the word out.
Mhm.
So we will send out news releases. We will
Mhm.
post it on the website, send it in the newsletters, just our usual forms of communications.
Yeah, and it would be nice to include maybe some of the people who were at the summit.
Yep.
Do
We could do that. We've got a pretty healthy email list going there, so we
Right.
can definitely
Right.
send that out to them.
Yeah, I think that's only one, that's one way of preserving the voices that have been in conversation with us.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? No?
Right.
Look at that. It's not even 7:00. Okay. The next Board of Education meeting will be on September 20th, 2023 at 5 p.m. And the special Board of Education meeting will be held September 27th, 2023, 5:15 p.m. or immediately following the Finance Committee meeting. Meetings will be held at the Allison Bruce King Educational Complex here at 6400 Uptown Boulevard and live streamed at aps.edu. And I bet you that was not transcribed really well because I didn't speak very clearly or slowly. And